Hello, everybody. This is Dave. I am starting a new podcast today called Inspiring Stories of Recovery, and I am here with my friend Mitch. Say hi,
Hey,
Mitch.
Dave.
And Bonnie. Say hi,
Hey
Bonnie.
guys, how you
Bonnie
doing?
is making coffee as we speak. So it's not the most professionally shot podcast you'll ever see, but believe me, if you watch this, you'll really enjoy it. Mitch has the most inspiring story in recovery that I know. So he's saying no, but you could be the judge after you see it. Which me and Bonnie spoke about just last night and thought that it's to me it's just inspiring. So if you're in recovery, this is something you really got to hear. So what I'm going to do is just ask Mitch some basic questions and about his recovery, and we'll see where it takes us. So Mitch, tell me about how your drug addiction. Tell me what was your addiction like?
Well, my addiction was weed was always a constant. I started when I was like 13, and my father owned a drugstore for 45 years, and I used to work there. So eventually, I started, with the Quaaludes back then, and I would steal drugs from my dad's store on a weekly basis, and I would do them, I would sell them, and then I would use the money to do drugs that I like better. I never got rich. I just was able to do a lot of drugs and not have to pay a lot of money for a long time. So yeah, I got into narcotics, and but it quickly got out of hand, and I ended up getting on the methadone program. And I was on the methadone program for 6 years, up at on Broad Street. And when you're in that life, I was also like, I was a weed dealer, and I came across lots of different people from different parts of the city and different walks of life. And eventually I became like this half-assed gangster in my head, and push comes to shove, you know how it always ends up. It always ends up with police and shit. So I had gotten busted a few times, a couple times cops who were crooked cops from Philly who ended up getting busted, and they wanted me to testify against them. I freaked out at that. I was a couple years clean, and the DA pulled me out of my job and took me downtown and said that one of the cops ratted out his partner, and he talked about how they used to rip me off for like Valium and weed and other stuff, and he wanted me to testify against them. I said, you want me to testify against narcs? I said, I don't know. I would like to live, so I'm going to pass on that. And it was a whole argument there, but eventually I got out, got away from that, and I came across, during my addiction, I came across a lot of shady people. I did a lot of shady shit, and probably the shadiest thing I ever did was setting my father's drugstore up for a robbery, and it was done on his day off, and it was with people I knew from down the shore and here, and it went off exactly the way it was supposed to. And I remember being in my bedroom upstairs with my 3 friends, and we're on the bed like with a trash bag full of like 500 bottles of Quaaludes and Percocet and Percodan and Dilaudid and every fucking great narcotic there was. And my parents are like banging on my door saying, "Oh, we got to go to our drugstore. Someone robbed it." And, I'm like, "Oh, do you want me to go with you?" Being the nice son. Meanwhile, I was the one that set the whole thing up. So eventually that led to another thing that I set up a robbery at a place I worked at in Germantown. It was a pharmacy. And it was also home health care. And I was in the home health care business right after high school for about, 10 years. And I'd gone to New York and got certified in fitting different types of back braces and neck braces on people. And that was the business I was in. And but the one place I was working at that time also had a pharmacy. And I lived up here in Northeast, but the apartment complex, everyone in the apartment complex was doing one thing or another. That was the years. It was late 70s. So many people were doing shady shit. And these guys from Germantown had an apartment next door to me just to party. They lived in Germantown, but they came down here and they were dealers in cough syrup. And they would buy weed off me. They would bring girls. They would do all kinds of drugs and party with chicks. And that was their thing. So I became friendly with them. And I worked in Germantown and it was their home turf. And I explained to them that, it could be a good score. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into with these guys. These guys were the real deal criminals. And only through the grace of God did they not kill anybody.
So let me ask you this: what was the end? Where did you really think you needed this was the bottom?
Yeah,
because
we
went through. Yeah, go ahead.
We're getting there.
Yeah, go ahead. No,
the
it's
end
good.
of it was these guys got busted that same day that the robbery happened because they used each other's name while they were robbing the place, and it was a year process of them going to court and this and that. Everyone who was there, all the other employees and the 4 customers were all called as witnesses for the defense. For the prosecution. I was called as a witness for the defense. They wanted me to say they weren't the ones who did it. Which was kind of like impossible, and it didn't work out. Anyway, they ended up getting busted and doing like 5 to 10 years, and one guy did 15 years. And about a week after that trial ended, I got busted. 10 cops kicked in my doors, pointing guns at my face. I had a gun laying on my night table next to me. And they took me down to the roundhouse. I got charged with a lot of charges. 6 of them or 7 of them were felonies. And I remember I fell asleep in the cop car on the way down to the roundhouse. And the detective looks at me and says, for someone whose life is falling apart, you don't seem all that concerned. And I said, you know what? It's finally over. It was such a relief because I knew it was over. I didn't know, I figured I was going to prison. And so it turns out I was neighbors of a lawyer, two lawyers, and one of the lawyers was married to a judge's daughter in Philly, so he had connections, and I ended up getting 5 years probation. 5 years probation, and I had to pay a fine, and I had to pay money to this judge. And I obviously won't use his name.
Good.
And, he's not a judge anymore. I never know if he's still alive.
Yeah.
But that was in 83, and I was in a methadone clinic, and they said if you want to beat jail, beat prison, your only shot is to get clean. You got to get clean. You got to get letters from the rehab saying you're a different person, all that kind of stuff. And that's what I did. I mean, that was the only reason why I went to rehab. I didn't really think I was going to stop, but the idea that right now, right then and there, I wasn't using, and I was going to meetings then. I started going to meetings.
So let me ask you this how did you find out about recovery? How did you know people in recovery? I mean, we know each other, Mitch, 40 years, and I know a lot of your story, but I think somebody that might be out there right now not knowing about recovery, how did you, obviously now it's a lot easier. You can just go online and find out stuff, or hopefully you can learn from just watching this video about how, but people are probably interested to find out, how did you find out about recovery?
Yeah.
Remember, this is 1983 at the time.
Yeah, there was. Mm-hmm. We went to this meeting, and it wasn't there anymore. And
that was your first meeting out, or you're going to treatment, right?
No, I'm sorry.
In
treatment, in Roxborough, there was a meeting every Friday and Saturday night.
Right, and
the
you
kind
went
of meeting that I was attracted to.
And how'd you feel when you were going to your first meetings back then? Do you remember?
Yeah, the first meeting I went to, the speaker was a big-time drug dealer that I had known. Big time.
Right.
I mean, he was big time. And he's real heavy, and he's got good color, and he used to be a junkie. And I said, damn, look at this guy. He's talking about the wife and the kids and the house. And look at him. You just knew he was straight.
Did you really believe that in the beginning that you could get clean? That
No.
You didn't think so. Why?
No.
Why would you say that, Mitch?
Because it was it was so horrible, and the repercussions just physically. I didn't even know at that point about mentally, but physically were so bad. I never wanted. That's the one thing that keeps dope fiends from getting straight. They don't want to go through that withdrawal.
Yeah, so I'm watching this video, and let's say for the first time now, and I'm struggling, and I don't think I can get clean. So that's really so you stayed clean. What was it? 13 years?
I stayed clean a little over 12 years.
12 years, and then what made you decide? Jumping ahead a little in the story here, but what made you decide to relapse? Because you were doing good, right? You were feeling good.
Very involved.
Yeah,
I was majorly involved in conventions.
Yeah,
and
got
married.
All right,
and got the house, got the dogs, and everything was getting better, and it was the first couple of years of my marriage were awesome.
Right.
And then after that, it was a nightmare.
Now, let me just clarify. Did you say, were you involved up until the time you relapsed? Or like me, Mitch, I'm I relapsed a couple times. And Bonnie also relapsed a couple times. Do you feel that that you had stopped making meetings, stopped being involved? Or did you, what we call, in recovery, we call a reservation is, in our heads, Bonnie can relate to Mitch, that what happens is we think that one day we could smoke weed or have a drink or whatever, and a lot of people don't talk about that. Do you think that was it with you, Mitch, or you just stopped getting involved? What was it with you? Like for me, I knew the day I was going to use. I knew it was coming. Did you have that feeling, Mitch?
Not exactly. I wasn't involved to the extent that I was.
Right.
But I went to my home group which was up in Roxborough every week. But I wasn't clean. I was using it at that point. And I would, at the break, I would go into the bathroom.
But what I'm asking you, though, is for me, I remember that I had the best intentions when I was going to use. I was just going to smoke pot on weekends. It was all going to be okay, and everything was going to be great. So for you, when you got high again after 13 years, do you remember what that first high was like? And did you feel bad, or how did you feel when you relapsed after all that? 13 years or 12 and a half years is nothing to sneeze at. It's a long-term recovery.
Yeah.
Do you remember what you felt
I
like?
didn't care.
You didn't
I didn't care. No, my life was so bad at that point.
Yeah.
I wanted to die.
So your life, do you think your life was starting to get bad because you weren't as involved as you were?
No, my life was bad because my wife tried to kill herself 3 times in a 6-month period. So she was most of that time in 6 months in different hospitals, and I was trying to keep the house, the dog, the kid together.
So it was just too much for you.
It just got to the point where, yeah.
And you felt like it just didn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Is that what you felt like?
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you. So once you started using, how fast did it take you to really get to like a bottom again? Like, was it just like smoking pot or doing whatever? Or you were back to your drug of choice?
The first time I used, I didn't even know where to cop anymore.
Right. It was 13 years.
So I went down to Kensington.
Okay.
Picked up a hooker because they're all junkies.
Right.
And said, I don't want what you're selling, but I want dope. Can you help me out?
Right.
She goes, absolutely.
So you went right to dope, is what you're saying?
Right to dope.
Okay. So how long did you stay out there, Mitch?
7 months.
Okay. And at 7 months, what made you decide to get clean again? Did you just...
She started getting better.
And then, so what you're saying is you kind of tied in... Well, let me just say one thing in a personal note, that we don't know a lot of the things today... back then that we knew today. I'm putting this at like 1996. Is that correct?
Yeah, around there.
Okay, so you came back. How'd you feel when you came back and you got honest finally?
Ooh.
Did you feel like an idiot? Or did you feel good? I felt good.
No, I didn't feel real welcomed. I felt like a loser because I was one of them people that talked a lot of shit in meetings. Mm-hmm. And I would,
So you felt,
I believe...
so people can't get the timeline. So before you relapsed, you were really involved in NA.
Yeah,
right?
and I believed everything that
in
I
the
learned.
12-step fellowship.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but you were living it. So, it really wasn't a lie. What you're saying, so people can understand, is you're saying that when you came back to the program, right, you felt like almost, and tell me if I'm wrong, a hypocrite. Because you were talking all this great recovery stuff, and when I remember me too, Mitch, and Bonnie, when somebody would relapse, we would be like, "Oh, what did like an outcast." So if I understand what you're saying correctly, make it easier for people to understand, is you felt almost like a hypocrite. Is that right? In the beginning, or no? You just didn't care. You could whatever.
I really didn't care.
Were you happy to be back, Mitch?
Not in the beginning. I was sick. People from the program, it was like my second day without drugs, and people from the, Kenny and a bunch of other guys scooped me up and took me to a meeting. I had a blanket wrapped around me.
You were detoxing.
It was, yeah.
You didn't go back to treatment, right? Or you did? Did you go to detox?
No, not the first time I relapsed, no.
Okay. So you relapse, you come back, you're doing good, right?
Things get better. Yeah.
Things are getting better, or you're getting better. This is different.
Things got better, but the marriage was falling apart.
Okay. So things get better. Then what happens?
I got clean for a year.
You stay clean a year.
And then I realized that I didn't feel like it was a gift anymore. It wasn't the same.
Took it for granted.
It wasn't even the same as the first time I used. It got clean. It wasn't the same. That first time was like pink cloud, everything's great, blah, blah, blah. Here, I didn't get none of that jazz. All I got was a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, and and the opportunity presented itself. I said, "Fuck it, this isn't even worth it."
Okay. So now you get clean, you get high, right? You come back again. How do you feel now this time you come back?
I just knew it was my last shot.
It was it. You were done. All the stuff
Well,
that you felt the time you...
My boss at work, and that was the one thing I had that really meant something to
Right.
me. My boss was an ex-drug guy, kinda, and he said, "Look, I know you're using." He said, "The girl you work with can't stand you. You're mean to customers. I can't have it. So I got you a bed at
Where'd you go?
Liberté.
Right.
no, Liberté. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Livingren.
Right.
And
You look like a pregnant woman to me when you...
right. For those that don't know, Liberté is a
female recovery center that takes care of married women, pregnant women.
Women and kids.
Yeah, and women and kids. So Mitch didn't go there for the
No,
record.
I didn't
We're
go
going to
there.
clear that up.
No. So he said, you got to go tomorrow. If you don't go, it's fine. You're fired.
Okay. So you went to treatment.
I went to treatment.
Now, what year were we at? This is a year later, so it's like 1997, right?
Maybe 98.
Yeah, okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And, I went and did the whole detox, rock and roll. Didn't sleep for 30 days.
You were sick.
Oh, yeah.
And and you came back, and how did you feel when you knew you were done, but a lot of the stuff that you felt the first time you came back, you were just ready to go, right? It was that summer. Yeah. So now the best part about it is you meet Bonnie. I mean, you know Bonnie already. You guys get married. We're moving everything along here. So Bonnie is... introduce Bonnie here real quick again.
Hi.
Bonnie, just really a quick, like 3 or 4 minute thing on, like just what we were talking about for you, for Relapse. How it was for coming back, and really what got you going again. Because then we're going to get into Mitch's thing. But I just wanted you, because Bonnie, how long are you clean now?
22 years in June.
Okay. And Bonnie, I'll just give you a really brief thing, and she'll go, is Bonnie has been around as long as I have, which is early 80s, and struggled to finally get to where she is. So I'm going to give Bonnie the floor here for a minute or two, just to kind of tell her a quick story.
Yeah, simple. I didn't believe I had the disease of addiction.
Right.
And I kept trying to do it my way. And it took 44 years to get 22.
That's great,
basically.
though. A lot of people can't get a day. You know what I mean?
Today, like, I need to make meetings. If I don't make meetings, I use. And it's really that simple. Once I stop going, the lie kicks in, and I start to believe it. And the next thing you know, it always starts with a drink in my hand, and then I'm in a crack house.
Right. So Bonnie, so if I'm sitting out there today and I'm a young lady like you, and I don't think I could get clean. I don't think it's for me, because I've tried, just like you, Bonnie. I've tried a lot of times. I have this lie in my head, this song that keeps playing out that tells me I'm not an addict. So what would you tell her? What would you say to her?
If I can get clean, anyone can get clean.
That's what I thought you would say, right? Yeah. So, but
I mean, the desire, you can't force anyone to get clean. The desire has to be there, and when the pain gets great enough, and you want to change, then you're going to do what it takes to change.
Yeah, and I don't want people to get the impression that, because we're doing like a short kind of thing on Bonnie, that was a thing. I mean, she used she was married, she had children, she used all through that stuff. I mean, it wasn't like Bonnie, I don't want people to get the idea that it was just a simple thing that happened one day.
Oh, no,
It was a lot of struggle. It was a lot of coming back to recovery. It was a lot of not thinking she could do. Go ahead, Bonnie.
When I first came back, I had somebody told me to get out.
Yeah, and just if you're we're going to, 3 of us agree on this. Anybody can do it, right? So anybody can do it. So don't ever if you're in a meeting or you're somewhere, you have a family member or whatever, and don't ever tell them that they can't do it. What happened to Bonnie still sticks with her today. Maybe it helped her, maybe it didn't.
It
but
did.
I wouldn't suggest it personally if for somebody to hear it.
No, I wouldn't either.
You know,
But
and that's not how we are. You know.
it definitely saved my
The easier,
life.
softer way is usually what we go for.
Yeah, right. So what I'm going to jump into now, Mitch, is so everything's going at life. I'm not going to say it good. You know, you're married, you're with Bonnie, and then one day, right? What happens?
Talking about when
When you get sick, what happens?
Yeah. I started getting different symptoms, like my feet would blow up, my legs would blow up, and I was told to go to a cardiologist. And I went to the cardiologist, and he, started talking to me about heart failure and that I was in heart failure. And he tried some different things, but I also had some other things going on that he put two and two together. And I had carpal tunnel in both hands for about 15 years prior to this, and I still had it. And that is a sign with the heart of a disease at the time was pretty rare called cardiac amyloidosis. And he was just good enough doctor to think that could be a possibility, and he sent how to get to certain bone marrow biopsy, and they sent it to Mayo, and it came back positive.
So does the doctor say to you straight out at this point? I'm going to get to your reaction in a second, Bonnie. But does the doctor say to you and Bonnie together? Does the doctor say to you, Mitch, you have 6 years, 3 years, whatever it is, to live? Do you remember that day?
Oh yeah.
And tell me about that day, Mitch.
Well, I went to see this specialist in amyloidosis. He was a doctor out of Penn, but it was in Cherry Hill at Penn there. And the doctor basically told me, he says, if you just leave it untreated as is, you have about 9 months to live.
Okay. Bonnie, what about you? What did you...
So I called her up on the way home.
Okay, so she wasn't there when she...
No.
And you tell her. What do you think? What's going through your head when you tell her that, Mitch? Like, did you have any idea before you got there that this could possibly be the result, like an outcome of what this doctor could be? Or is it just like, you're just going through, I'm sick, and that's it, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm trying to recall.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I was going to get a diagnosis like that, a prognosis like that. I didn't think it was going to tell me flat out, you're going to die in 9 months if you don't start treatment. I said, what happens if I start treatment? Which involved infusions.
Right.
And he said, we're hoping to buy you another couple years, maybe 5.
So how do you feel in your head when you have to, like, tell Bonnie? How do you...
No, I was there.
No, I called you on the phone, remember?
No, I went with
Oh,
you
the
to
second
see
time, that
Dracula.
time.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So you hear it, Bonnie. What do you think?
I was horrified.
You just had no idea that this could be an outcome.
I remember the doctor talking about heart failure, and it's like getting to the point where like he's not going to be able to shave anymore. Like he can't without being out of breath.
Okay, here's the question people want to know, the answer to, and I'm going to ask you both the questions separate. Mitch, you get that diagnosis, and let me put it another way. Mitch, I get that diagnosis, I think to myself, I'm going to use. Do you think that to yourself?
At that time,
Does that cross your mind?
it might have crossed my mind a little bit, but
Not an obsession,
no,
not a
because I
plan.
know, believe me, I was around the program long enough to know that it would be bullshit. I knew that I would just go back to being a junkie. Even if I said I wanted to smoke a joint, because for me, whenever I get using thoughts,
Right.
it's always with weed.
Right.
It's never with other stuff.
But the other side of that...
But it's a gateway, and you get high,
Right.
and then you say, fuck it, well, now that I'm not clean, let me do what I always like to do.
Right, but the other side of that, Mitch, is that you're still an addict, right?
Yeah.
And still, for me, as an addict, and I'm get Bonnie in 1 second, but for me as an addict, when sometimes in my head, when I have it's something that's hard to deal with, it would be easier to do. A drug will talk to me. Like I can't control that. Bonnie, what about you? So you hear that from Mitch? Do you think of using?
No.
You don't think of using?
No.
Not at
No.
all.
I'm. When things get tough, that's the last thing I want to do. When
Okay.
things are good and I'm really happy, that's when I want to use.
Gotcha. So, okay. So you decide to take the treatment. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So through the did the narcotics and gummies or legal marijuana, does it ever come up? Does the doctor ever suggest it?
Not right away, but what happened was, for most of my life, I was always around 300 pounds.
Right.
I'd gone over 315, but I was always like around 280 to 300. And at this point, I started, the weight just came up. I mean, now I'm 170.
Right. But what I'm
I have to
asking,
work it eating to keep 170. And the doctor, my one oncologist, told me for my appetite, it wouldn't be a bad idea to try THC.
and what did you
He
say?
didn't say smoking because I don't think
No,
they would
what-
want me to
But
smoke.
what did you say?
I said, oh, I can't do that.
Did you think
I
about it?
told him I'm in recovery
Right.
and I don't want to do anything like that. And he was like, oh, okay. It was no big deal to him, but it just wasn't an option. That was the only thing in my life. Being clean is pretty much the only thing in my life that has made me feel good about myself. It's the only thing that I've ever done and had any kind of success at.
You are a success. Bonnie, what about you? Have you ever been to a doctor's appointment with Mitch and they suggested it? Or what about you in that situation? What do you think about, like, you're an addict, like I'm an addict, and we talked about it last night, little spoiler. What do you think? The doctor says, Mitch, you're in a lot of pain here. What if we just prescribe Percocet? I don't know what about you, Bonnie? What would you say?
I would tell him.
You would tell me to take it.
I would. Yeah, I would tell him to take it.
And she did.
Yeah.
She did.
I don't want him to suffer. I don't want him to be in pain. I mean, I've had major surgeries.
Right.
And
Right.
like
Yeah.
Percocet, heroin, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. That's not really my drug.
Right.
So it's easier for me to take as prescribed and be done with it.
Right.
But if it was my drug, I don't know if I could say the same thing.
Right, but still, for anybody out there too, I know plenty of people. We know people, a lot of people that come in on a cocaine or a crack and get addicted to perks, or whatever, in recovery, because a drug is a drug is a drug. We believe, and go ahead, Bob.
You know what I found just from my own personal experience? The bottom line is, if you want to be clean, no matter how many surgeries you go through, no matter how much medication
Right.
that you need to take as prescribed,
Right.
and then stop when it's time to stop.
Right.
If you don't want to use, you're not going to use.
I understand that, and I agree with you, Bonnie. But I agree with you, but I look at it another way too. Is that for me? When you put a drug in me, personally, I don't know the difference between whether that drug is there. And, I'm talking about, obviously maybe it's different for me because I was addicted to opiates. My mind doesn't know that it's there for pain. And I have successfully taken medication after surgeries. I just want to say that too. So we're here to tell you, and I'll speak for the three of us on this one, what the best thing to do is always consult with your doctor and other people in recovery and get people's experience, because our experience may not be your experience.
That's correct.
So we don't say you should or shouldn't. We're not here to tell you to take medication, not take medication. That is a personal decision that's best to be made by a medical professional. But what I'll tell people is one of the hardest things for me to do when I got clean, when I was in a bad situation, was tell the doctor I'm in recovery. That could save your life. Just that little, I'm in recovery. So
a little addendum to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Anyone who's suffered severe pain, like getting a wisdom tooth or back problem, whatever it is, because this happened to me and how I went out my last time. You're in a lot of pain. You don't want to use. You don't want to feel the pain anymore. And eventually, you give in and you get the script. So I got the script. I remember crying in the parking lot of a Rite Aid. I was holding a script for 60 perks, and I couldn't lift my leg more than an inch without agony going through my back at that time. And I knew that I had to take something. I had no choice. But at the same time, I also knew that once I put them first ones in my mouth, it was off to the races.
So,
I knew it.
So if we go through your thought process over the last whatever years, you're still going to meetings, you still talk to people, you're still active with people, your friends in recovery. Tell me how important it is about your support network in your recovery.
It's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. I mean, I've found out through Facebook, actually,
All right.
How many people care about me
and
really love and support me. It's really hard to accept for me. It's really very humbling. And some people, but you know what? Some people die never knowing how much they were loved. I know. I do know how much I'm loved. And the support and all that. And you know what? Again, I was starting to say, pain pills don't work. They might take the edge off the first day or two, and then you're in pain and you have a habit. That's it. They don't work anymore. So, if you're a drug addict and you think, well, this is going to be the answer, it's going to be the answer to having a habit again.
Right.
And having to go through, if you're lucky, and only a few are lucky. I'm one of the lucky ones that was able to come back and get double digits again. Not many people do.
What he's saying, just for people that don't speak our lingo, is Mitch was clean over 10 years, 2 times.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's very rare that people come back. First of all, and to jump on what he's saying more, is you play that out, and once you have a habit, the last thing you want to do is come back. So, Mitch, just to bring it back to this, is you would say that is the thing that goes through your head when a doctor would offer a prescription to you. You don't want to die.
No,
with a habit.
I don't want to die. I don't want to give up the friends that I have. I want to be able to look in the mirror and pretty much like what I see. That's what I have. But if I use, I'm not going to have any of that. And I don't want to lose. I don't want to lose all the good, all the people who showed me love. I don't want to do that.
So, if I'm watching this video right now and I'm dying, I have a terminal illness, what would you say to me?
You don't have to use. You don't have to use. It's not going to make it better. You're still going to die at some point if that's what they're telling you. But using's not going to make it better.
But I think that in my mind, if I'm in this situation, I have a license to use, right? I have a free high, as we say.
If you have a license to kill yourself, I guess you do.
Right.
That's what it comes down to. And all of us use because we wanted to die, but we were too pussy enough to really do it. I mean, that's what it is. You try to commit suicide through drugs, and you never die.
Right.
You just get a habit, and your life gets bad in all areas. That's what happens.
All right. Well, Bonnie, what about you? Any thoughts? You want to add anything to this?
Sure, just one. If you have a terminal illness and you decide to use and die, and then the next day they find a cure,
Yeah, right.
wouldn't that suck?
Right, yeah, for sure. Well, what we're going to do here, Mitch, do you have anything else you want to add to this? I mean, I think we had a good talk. I really do. You know, I'm out there I'll say it one more, because we keep talking about it, and say it one more. I'm out there struggling today, and I'm watching this. What do you tell me?
If you're someone who's not clean, getting clean is the biggest gift in the world. And there's different ways to do it. I go to a specific place. I'm not going to say the name because it's against our traditions, but you all know what I'm talking about, or you can find out. It's such a good way of life. I've seen people change their lives around to such a degree you would have no idea. And you can have a good life. You can have a life. You can have a life.
We have a friend that always says, there's a life waiting for you out there.
Yeah.
Bonnie, what about you? Closing thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm out there, I'm sitting here, I'm watching you, Bon. I'm married, I'm 2 kids, and I don't know if I can get clean.
the first step is asking for help, and then after that, you don't ever have to feel alone again, ever, for the rest of your life. You can go anywhere in the world, not in the country, in the entire world, and find recovery. Like, you just can. It's online, it's in person, we're everywhere. Like, we are literally everywhere. And I can go anywhere in the world and walk into a place and know that I'm not alone. And that's a pretty powerful feeling. And all I have to do is raise my hand and ask for help, and it's there. And like, for every disease that's out there, if I have to have one, I'll keep the one I got.
Well, Mitch, Bonnie, thank you guys so much. We're hoping to have a really good podcast here, but most of all, help a lot of people. So that's it, guys. Take care.
Peace.